Suggestion.
Eugenie Sage.
Mr Chair, I'm pleased to take a short call on part 2 of the bill, not because we support it, but there's a supplementary order paper 159 in my name which would delete the transitional arrangements for reorganisation provisions which are in clause 27, and that was intended as a consequential amendment to the rest of the SOP, which sought to delete clause 23 and the corresponding schedule 1, which sets out these new reorganisation provisions. And the reason for the whole supplementary order paper and the retention of the current reorganisation provisions, which are set out in Schedule 3 of the Principal Act, is because there is no evidence that the current law is causing a problem. When there is an initiation and implementation of a reorganisation proposal, it requires quite careful thought to minimise any adverse impacts and to ensure that it benefits residents and ratepayers. So the current criteria in the Local Government Act strike the right balance, in our view, between enabling such reorganisations and mergers to occur where their implications have been properly assessed and where those proposals have community support and they promote good government. But National wants the changes that are in this bill because the former Minister, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith, was aggrieved that the amalgamation of Nelson and Tasman districts didn't succeed. And why didn't it succeed? Because Nelson residents voted down the proposal in overwhelming numbers. Well, the former minister knew that they would vote it down from indications in the community. There were 24,857 people against that proposed amalgamation. And under the current Act, it is a democratic right for local residents and ratepayers to have their say about how they should be represented and how they should be governed through the mandatory requirement for a poll. But this bill extinguishes that right and requires electors to get up a petition before there is a poll. And certainly in the government SOP there has been some tweaking around the edges. Now there's 60 days to get up the required number of signatures on the petition, and the petition is in each area rather than the whole of the area. But the bill still extinguishes that fundamental right to have a mandatory poll and for people to have a say. And that's because this government doesn't like people voting. It doesn't trust democracy, as we've seen in Environment Canterbury with the ECAN bill in 2010 and the extension of the suspension of regional democracy there. So why is the government so keen on reorganisation? It's because it wants to supersise councils, makes it much easier then to contract out the provision of council services. Yet the Select Committee heard a number of times in Auckland from local boards about the longer decision-making lines, the less accountability, the more difficult access to decision-makers when you get big councils. So, Mr Chair, the SOP goes back to the provisions in the Substantive Act, and one of the other reasons that we are opposing the reorganisation provisions is that the bill puts a new section 31A into the body of the Principal Act, and that gives the Minister the power to, and I quote, specify measures and expectations relating to the Commission's performance of its powers and duties. And the bill specifically mentions timeframes against which the Commission must progress certain matters and which applications are to have the highest priority. So what we're seeing here, Mr Chair, is once again control central in operation, local government being directed from Wellington, not just through the much expanded powers of ministerial interference so that councils are always looking over their shoulders to see what the minister's thinking in relation to their fiscal performance because they're scared of being replaced by commissioners or have a Crown manager supervise what they're doing. But also here, instead of the Local Government Commission operating at arm's length from the Minister in reorganisation proposals, the Minister can prioritise which proposals are to get priority. And as the Honourable Annette King noted, there are certain areas where the Government wants these reorganisation proposals to proceed. So, Mr Chair, this bill is bad.
Are you seeking another call?
Mr Chair.
Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Chair. This bill is bad because I suspect we will get the same voting of 6160 on this part that we had on part 1. And what does that mean, Mr Chair? That we get zig-zag policy making because there is not a reasonable consensus in this House on something as important as local government and the reorganisation procedures which should apply to amalgamation, nor is there a consensus, there's strong opposition to the bill, on something as important as local government, which is such a strong sector of the economy, which is so important in providing for communities, promoting community well-being. We have dramatically opposed views and the bill is only just going to scrape through. So, Mr Chair, zigzag policy making is not good law. The process by which the bill is being rushed through without careful thought is not conducive to good lawmaking.
Can I take Andrew Williams?
Thank you, Mr Chair. I take a call, part 2 of the